When a mysterious, mucus-coated lobster unleashes a deadly virus, an ancient sea intelligence awakens with one mission: wipe out humanity. Virginie and Laura plunge into the abyss, racing to unravel a centuries-old conspiracy lurking beneath the waves. Brace yourself. This deep-sea nightmare will change everything you thought you knew about the ocean. There's no bait in the cage, but this lobster has to go into the trap to be caught by humans on purpose. After taking the fishermen to the shore, the lobster soon appeared in the seafood market. And this is a 5-star chef who happened to find this sword-shaped lobster and bought it at a high price. After returning to his work, the chef prepared a bowl of noodles for the guest. However, when he was about to cut the lobster like usual, the bottom of the lobster was covered with white mucus. At this time, the chef was curious to check the lobster's body. The chef quickly wiped the mucus on his face with a towel and angrily ordered his subordinates to get rid of the lobster. When his subordinates saw the chef leaving, they handed the lobster to another intern. The intern didn't know how to deal with it, so he crushed the lobster with a grinder and threw it into the sewer. As a result, the lobster was covered with white mucus. Then he saw the crushed lobster flowing into the sewer and was satisfied to leave. Soon, the chef began to work on the dish. But I don't know why his fingers began to tremble uncontrollably. The chef, who thought the room was too stuffy, wanted to go out for a breath. As a result, his breathing became more and more difficult. His heart rate was rising in the form of a finger count. At this moment, the chef suddenly remembered the mysterious smell in the lobster's body. He wanted to rush to the hospital immediately, but his body completely collapsed on the way. He collapsed on the ground and spat out black blood. In the end, he died of an explosion. Because the chef wiped the mucus on the cutting board, the same symptoms appeared. Then he was sent to the hospital urgently. Soon, the chef was saved and died ineffectively. However, the chef came to the hospital in advance and was fully prepared. Faced with all the equipment and the most famous doctor, he still failed to save him. What's more, Virginie couldn't find the source of the virus. Where is it? Then more and more employees in the restaurant had a problem. The death was the same as before. Soon, Virginie collected the black blood of the dead. Then she cut her finger with a knife. Then she combined the blood of the two. After observation through a microscope, she found that the blood cells had been swallowed by a virus that could be seen with the naked eye. After that, Virginie learned that the employees in the restaurant died after being in contact with the infected lobster. She desperately wanted to know where the dead lobster was thrown. But the manager said that it was thrown into the sewer. At this time, Virginie suddenly panicked, because the infected lobster was crushed and flowed into the entire water system of humans. Soon, an employee washing a car suddenly felt suffocated. He started coughing violently. Then he spat the black blood on the windshield. Then more and more patients came to the hospital for treatment. At that time, Virginie was shocked. It is necessary to know that the population of this city is more than 20 million. If all the water resources that are in contact with the infected are affected, the consequences are unimaginable. Soon, Virginie responded to this matter to her superiors. Given that there is still no way to defeat the virus, she suggested that the government immediately tell the people about the water pollution and stop all non-essential activities. Now, except for the main fee, do not contact the water in any other form. However, how could the seniors easily listen to Virginie? If they tell this fact to the public, it will not only create panic, but also seriously affect the economic development of the city. For this reason, the seniors did not agree with Virginie's advice. However, as time went by, Laura was terrified. They found a very rare, flammable ice deep in the ocean. A lighter is needed to ignite a fierce flame. However, what they did not expect was that the number of rare flammable ice in the ocean was far more than one, but a large number of them were distributed around. At this moment, the ship passing by encountered a fatal disaster. The number of fake ice made from flammable ice rose to the surface of the sea, and the water reaction was intense. In the expression of the crew, the whole ship sank into the sea, and the crew on the ship were all alive. Soon, Laura was shocked to tell this news to her university professor, and the professor felt incredible. To know that the depth of the sea where Laura is located is at least more than 800 meters, it is impossible that there are so many fake icebergs floating on the surface of the water. To investigate deeply, the professor put the $10 billion aircraft into the near 1,000-mile seabed and wanted to observe how the flammable ice made from fake ice floated up. However, something more incredible happened. Unexpectedly, a large number of ice worms that have never lived in this area appeared on the seabed. They swallowed the seabed as food, and when the sailor caught a few ice worms, he was terrified. They are not the same as the ice worms we know. Not only do they have sharp teeth, but they also have a very strong bite force, so that they keep swallowing the ground at an amazing speed. Even the dead body of the ice worm was decomposed into acid and corroded into a deep hole. In the end, the fake ice and flammable ice floated on the seabed. However, what is more surprising is that the speed of iceworms' reproduction and growth is far beyond human cognition. Just a few hours later, the iceworms grew several times the speed visible to the naked eye. Once they spread all over the world, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, the crew also wanted to collect more iceworms with instruments. Suddenly, the ship was in a fierce battle, accompanied by the surrounding seawater boiling. A large amount of oil and fake ice quickly rose to the seabed. Fortunately, the ship where the professor was located was big enough. Otherwise, they would also be swallowed by the boiling seawater, just like the ship that met with the disaster before. In this way, all the ships in the world sounded the alarm. However, while everyone was trying to figure out how to deal with the iceworm, they didn't expect that only the size of the fingernail had changed like the iceworm. The chopper was many times larger than before and was attached to the human ship, slowing down the speed of travel. At this time, humans gradually realized that the ocean seemed to be telling them, with actual actions, not to step into the ocean. At the same time, there were also paranormal phenomena all over the world, only to see a large number of jellyfish concentrated on the seabed of the Mediterranean Sea. And their behavior was unrecognizable, as if they were proclaiming their territory. Even the friendly jellyfish fought on this day. At this moment, humans were still breathing with the jellyfish. As a result, in the next second, the jellyfish followed the chopper out of the water and then hit the human ship heavily. At the same time, the ship was smashed into two halves, and a large number of frightened humans were killed. Then the polar bear began to bite the humans in the water and planned to kill all of them. After that, the researcher immediately dissected the body of the jellyfish. Surprisingly, there was an unknown liquid in his brain, and this liquid was the same as the lobster liquid. At this time, the researcher had a terrible idea. He thought that the creatures in the ocean seemed to be retaliating against humans on purpose. At the same time, on the other side of the coast, a couple was kissing, and a greater disaster occurred. However, this was under the fierce eyes of women. Dozens of crabs crawled from the ocean to the land. The man was so scared that he pulled the girl to run quickly. As a result, he fell in the middle of the road in a hurry. Unexpectedly, the crabs crawled so fast that they quickly invaded the entire land. Then Virginie, who knew the situation, saw the crab eating. The speed of killing was even faster than that of the lobster infection. Finally, she got the sample and wanted to do the research as soon as possible. However, before she could cut it open with a cutting tool, Virginie was shocked to find a large amount of white mucus flowing out of the crab's body. Then she took a small jar of liquid and poured it on the cultivation base. She found that the mucus in the lobster and the crab was the same. At this time, the researcher was puzzled. After all, lobster, crab, and crab are not in the same ocean position between these creatures. How could there be the same mucus? To find out how these liquids were formed, the researcher jumped into the sea. She installed a camera in the body of the sleeping crab. At the moment they woke up, they hurried back to the ship and quickly left the crab's sight. Then the researcher immediately captured a video. She wanted to see where these crabs were going. But then a strange scene happened. A crab that never liked to dive into the deep sea went to the seabed. This is the video that everyone saw in the surveillance video. It was found that there was a bright object in front of the crab. Although the surveillance is very vague, everyone knows that it is a smart object that has light. It is it that manipulates the creatures in the ocean to retaliate against humans. It is known that the ocean has existed on Earth for 4 billion years, and this creature has a history of at least 100 million years. So, Virginie gathered the world's top scientists to meet. They decided to hold a press conference to announce the truth, but the authoritative professor decided to quit because he is still not sure whether there is a smart object at the bottom of the sea. After all, what they found was just a flash of light. If it is confirmed that this is fake, then his reputation for a lifetime will be ruined. In the end, Virginie had to take the risk alone and led several scholars to hold a press conference. However, when Virginie publicized the truth she saw to the public, she suddenly received ridicule from all over the world. They all thought she was crazy. To know if there is a smart creature, it was recorded in history thousands of years ago. How could it be discovered now? Just like this, when Virginie was mercilessly attacked by experts from all over the world, there was a fatal disaster on the Norwegian coastline in Europe. The only thing they saw was a huge tsunami without a sign. It instantly destroyed the entire town. In the end, tens of thousands of people died, and soon, a rich man from Japan learned the situation and couldn't help it. So he contacted Virginie herself and decided to provide enough funds to let the other party go to the deep sea to investigate the truth of the smart creature. If necessary, he had to find a way to kill him. In the end, Virginie and her scholars secretly set out to find the path to the smart creature and went to the deep sea where no one was. In order not to be discovered by outsiders, Virginie cut off all contact with the outside world. Then the crew entered the deep sea. They eagerly wanted to see the appearance of the smart creature. However, no one expected that, although the radar scanned for a bright material, the crew looked around with their naked eyes but saw nothing. Did the smart creature in their eyes exist in other forms? Just when everyone was in a trance, they again received a sound from the smart creature at the bottom of the sea. But no one could understand what this strange sound meant. The carbon dioxide in the submersible rose sharply. It will run out of oxygen soon. However, Laura didn't plan to go back to the sea immediately. Instead, she hurriedly turned off all the energy systems of the driver. After all the lights went out, she looked at the mysterious, luminous material on the radar. It was getting closer and closer. Laura looked around, but she still couldn't see where the smart creature was. At this time, the driver, who had been professionally trained, suddenly couldn't stand this darkness. He hurriedly turned on the power to go back to the sea. And just as the two of them approached the scientific research ship, Laura accidentally looked to one side and found a ray of luminous material entwined on the glass. And they didn't know that the smart creature had already followed them to the scientific research ship. At that time, the energy system of the entire scientific research ship continued to flash. Soon, a member of the ship fell to the ground, and his palm was pointing to someone. Then the member of the ship was put into the medical room, and there were a lot of red spots on his body. At this time, Virginie performed a spinal puncture on the member of the ship. She extracted a small tube of spinal fluid from it. After studying the shocking discovery, an unknown substance had been found in the spinal fluid of a member of the ship, and this substance is very likely to be the smart body itself. Now she is trying to combine with human cells. This is a super smart creature that some people guess they found. He is trying to study the structure of the human body. Then Laura came to the bottom of the ship, surprised to find that the seawater has a strange blue light, and there is a kind of active cell in it. It's still building the shape of the creature. At this time, Laura finally saw the shape of this super smart creature. Karim ordered to seal the bottom of the ship. Then the world's top biologist observed and found that although this super smart creature is single-celled, what's amazing is that it can be combined into multiple cells. It can change its appearance and vital signs at will. To be precise, its life form has exceeded human cognition. Soon, the scientist received the information sent by the smart body again. There is not only sound in it, but also a picture of the ocean history surrounding the breakup of the supercontinent. However, it is 2.5 billion years ago. It means that the smart body was already there at that time. And their memory is collective memory. Continuous inheritance to the present, but now the super smart body has completely created a connection with humans. What happened next was unimaginable.